But the only way we could deal with an equitable division of the profit was to make sure that each branch had the right to manage in rotation. Once you shift over to a company, you come under the practice of company law. Company law specifies the sort of accounting you would have to keep. It specifies when you have to notify members of the company of the accounts. In other words, you move on to much more hands-on, much more transparent process of managing the estate than what we have in the lineage estate. And this family was probably one of the first to see the problem when they shifted over. And why it was important, you know, they often tell you that Chinese family estates will last many generations. And I can tell you that is not true. Because in the old way of managing an estate, you know, if father is there, father has a strong hand on how money should be looked after. After father died, the accountant is still there, but the several sons will be drawing on family resources for their own business and their deeds to no ends of harm. Because as you know, it's almost irresistible that if you could make money out of it, you do it for yourself, and if the operation was losing money, that would have gone into the public account. And the father not being there, nobody would put an end to this. And therefore, family businesses much more often than not fell apart. Now, what Mrs. Neer did was to hold the family operation together by setting up shares. So now the sons owned shares, it didn't matter who was manager, you could have continuity in management. You didn't need a new manager every year. It didn't matter who was manager, you would have a share of the profit. This was what the family was doing. Now very quickly, to get to that story, you see, this is a picture that came out of, they published the minutes of the meeting of the company. And this is a picture of the family meeting that they had in working out what they were doing. That's the family. That's another family I know that registered their estate in a property company. They became, as they say here, they registered in Hong Kong. And not all their property was in Hong Kong actually, quite a lot was in Foshan, but they registered as the limited liability company, limited company in Hong Kong. That's their family. Now, my question there was the rise of company law in China. This is 1865, the Hong Kong company law. That's the first company law in China. Now, I say that not just because Hong Kong was located on the edge of China. I say that because in 1865, there wasn't a lot of business in Hong Kong, or it was in Shanghai. And so the common practice was to register the company in Hong Kong and then do business in Shanghai, which in fact created a lot of legal problems for the British Supreme Court in China as the consular court. And it was decided by the consular court in the end, and Hong Kong Chinese law incorporated, that at least one of the principal directors would have to hold a British passport. Because otherwise it's hard to justify why you could register a company in Hong Kong and do business in China. Well, that was the law in Hong Kong. Chinese partnership. We have to go into this because it shows you how the world was changing. We were talking about family trust, we were talking about way, and all along the trouble they were creating for business. It was a problem that took the British colonial government 30 years to deal with, not only in Hong Kong, but to keep Hong Kong in Singapore. It kept moving back and forth. And the problem was this. Chinese people did business in Hong Kong and Singapore as groups. They were known as such and such Tong, but nobody knew who was responsible. You know, if it went bankrupt, who did you go after? And consequently, the British colonial government in Singapore and Hong Kong had to think about legislation to deal with that situation. And it's very interesting. director of Project Iraq, a very interesting reply. He said, no need to register the company because we know who they are. The government didn't know who they are, the people who did business didn't know who they are, but the bank knew who they were. As you can understand, the bank knew them the real deal. So this was another issue that they had to deal with. The Qing dynasty government came before company law in 1904. Once you got the company law, once you got companies reported in the newspapers, the name comes up often on the street. People started using the idea of the company. You see it on signboards. Whether or not you register, you knew that there was a thing called a company. Now, to get all of that, you've got to understand, China was also changing at the end of the 19th century. There were people who started thinking that burning incense was old-fashioned, was superstitious, and so on. And therefore, for a group of people, especially people who were educated abroad, like the overseas Chinese, they returned to China. Instead of building ancestral laws, they built libraries. So, this is in Taishan, in a prominent village, and it's not the only example. Another family went back home, instead of building ancestral hall, they built a library. But what do you find in the library? You will find a plaque somewhere there with the names of all the ancestors. This is ancestral sacrifice by another name. You see, the practice keeps changing. By the end of the 19th century, on the business side of it, it would go under company law. On the cultural side of it, it would come under a library. Does it mean the end of the ancestral law? No, I don't think so. This is the hall I showed you that was built in the 16th century with that map. And last time I was there, people were still having the religious feast outside. They're still carrying on as the cultural art of probably a registered estate of the company. I should stop there.
For questions and answers. So I know that there's some people there who would love to ask David some questions. Who would like to start? Okay, I have a question. Can you hear?
Professor, in your research on this ancestral ocean, is there a rules on the tablet design? What constitutes to put information on the tablet?
Tablet?
Yeah.
You mean the stone tablet?
No, the one on the bottom.
The pillars,
The
couplets.
The tablet.
Ancestral tablet.
Is there a rules
Yes.
about the size
Yes.
and the information put on?
Yes. There are texts which specify how the tablet should be designed and what characters you should put on. Now, if one wants to be very strict, now let me add that not strict all over China. You know, I can tell you the text to go to, and I can tell you what it says down there. The standard is, of course, Juzi Jiang. That's Juzi's family manual. And now, unfortunately, we don't know if Juzi actually wrote the one that we now have. So there are different versions of the same. However, there's strict rules of what you should do to the tablet right there. And that is, and again I stress, it's not done all over China. If you really have the chance to see it, I don't know if you want it here, the tablet is not a piece of wood. The tablet is a little drawer at the back.
No.
And yes, there should be a little drawer there. So you pull that out, and there should be a record of the answer. You know, it gives you variations in his name, his wife, the children, when he was born, when he died, information of the sort. So yes, there's strict rules as to what I
for practice?
Can the template compile into one, like a frame? Because in my home, we compile everything onto the frame.
Yes. You see, by law, you shouldn't have had so many tablets on that order. You see, by law, the number of tablets you have depends on your rank in society. So, the emperor would have his own way in the first ancestry, and nobody else would. And we shouldn't have had a lot of tablets up there. But from the time it started, Wangdong, and maybe Filial, we've had this practice of putting a lot of tablets that could never move them out. The standard practice for most of us who don't have an official degree would be 5 generations. And we should be moving the early ones out. Presumably, we have the ceremony at the birth.
Yeah, well, everybody is a senior official or whatever.
Well, what quite often people do, and it varies from place to place, is to have one tablet for all ancestors.
The Chinese are very innovative. They do a lot of things, just do a lot of shortcuts and still won't find it to certain rules.
Yes, of course, and it's double all over the place. Yes.
Alexander?
Professor, one clarification might lead to two questions. We saw the map just now on Putian,
Yes.
and I believe just off the coast of Putian there is this Meisho Island, the grand temple of the goddess of the sea.
Yes.
But I was told that that island doesn't belong to mainland China, but belongs to Taiwan.
No.
No?
You need a visa to go there from China.
We need a China visa to go there. But it seems the Taiwanese can go directly to that Meisho Island without going through China.
No, that's Jingmen.
Huh?
Jingmen. I think you refer to Jingmen.
No, because there is this huge.
But even when they go to Jinmen, they have to go to there.
The Taiwanese need Taiwanese.
Where are the Sunni thing?
You need, but Taiwanese don't.
Is that right? I don't know.
Special arrangement.
From Hong Kong you need. But from Taiwan, the Taiwanese from Taiwan go to Jingmen, they do not need.
You know what it sounds like to me? Many years ago, I was on the China-Vietnam border, on the Chinese end.
The unique one.
What's the name? I can't remember the name of the town. I was on right on the border. And there's a bridge over which you go into Vietnam. And somebody explained to me, if you need a visa, you pay so much money and you go on a bridge. You don't need a visa, you go under the bridge and that goes. But when you say the Taiwanese don't need a visa, that's what it sounds like to me. Well, no, you don't need a visa to go to Jinmen.
Yes.
But from Jinmen into
Yes,
China, you do.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. But Meizhou doesn't belong to Taiwan.
Meizhou
is
does not
the
belong.
mainland.
Oh, I think you're right, yes.
So Meisho doesn't belong to China.
It belongs to China.
Belongs to China.
Doesn't belong to Taiwan.
But the thing was, we happened to be there during the Ma Zhou's birthday.
Yes.
And there was we see thousands of
Oh,
Taiwanese.
yes. Oh, yes.
And they said that for Taiwanese to go to Meisho, they don't need a visa because the island still belongs to Taiwan.
They got the 5,000.
Well, I'm very surprised. I'm very surprised at what they do.
Yeah, and also they were building a lot of this beach apartments and condominiums, and I was told that these apartments and condominiums are only allowed to be sold to Taiwanese.
That could be. I mean, I don't know what. I
That's why
don't know the USA market.
I mean,
Meisho.
I mean, it was rather kind of a disadvantage because we don't speak Mandarin, we don't speak Mandarin, and I'm just wondering if we have misunderstood our God.
I was there during the Ma Zhou birthday. I met the Taiwanese, and they really have to. They got the 5,000 to go there.
They have
On the
what?
pass.
5,000 is a Taiwanese.
Special pass.
Oh, you need a special pass to go there, but then that it doesn't belong to
I think you may have talked to the wrong tour guide.
that's beside the point. But the clarity is, I was just wondering, why is it only Taiwanese able to buy the property?
No, I think that's why I say sometimes at the end of the day, you speak to a lot of people who carry the version of stories, whether it's half true, near true, or whatever it is, and that propagates.
And then another point was, we were told that the lychees from Putian is supposedly the best in the whole of China. And that they even send this lychee.
I've heard that from different parts of China. I've heard that from different parts of China.
Yeah.
Their lychee is always better than any other.
I think we closed the issue now.
I'd like to ask a question about what is the relationship between the institutions that you were talking about and the Buddhist and Taoist institutions?
Now, that's a good question. There probably was a lot of connection between the Buddhist tradition of holding property through the monastery and indirectly from that tradition and what came up as the legal practice. There probably was a lot of connection. And I say that because in the Soul Ministry, when we started doing all this about Ancestral, why did they start? It was read what these people were saying. They didn't want to be Buddhist. Somehow in the Soul Ministry, they were practicing Buddhism, don't get me wrong. There were monasteries everywhere. They worked with monks. The monks were everywhere. But the scholars were coming up into their own tradition. And they were beginning to feel that they wanted to use a Buddhist tradition, but they didn't have another tradition to use. One of them left us a very interesting essay in which he said, I really have to find a way of dealing with the cost inside what I call. I'm beginning to have too many men. They've got this practice where people die and they were not buried immediately, but they were stored in the house. And eventually, a number of these people had died, and the coffins were accumulating. But because this guy didn't want to be Buddhist about it, he didn't know what to do about the coffins. So he wrote an essay. He said, I really have to work out what I'm going to do, because I'm beginning to too many coffins at home. So you see, these people were seeking ways of dealing with this which were not Buddhist. However, what they decided on was not to adopt all these ceremonies, but in actual fact they borrowed from a lot of Buddhist practices, including probably the idea of compiling genealogy. Because the Buddhists have been compiling, not genealogies of ancestors, but genealogies of their lines, that we said, their intellectual lines of descent, masters, disciples. They've had that tradition long time before we had ours. So yet we copied a lot from the Buddhists without that issue. Taoists is a different sort of thing, because there's not one Taoist church. Taoist is a very general term when you use it to represent individual. There's no clear boundary between what you call Taoism and what you call Buddhism. It's essentially the same thing. Now, what you might say is they're gods and they're shrines, and then there's some people with special powers. Some of them get the powers from their masters, and some of those lines we now look upon as Taoist sects. Because at times some of them were aligned with the government. Therefore, places like Filial became particularly important. You see, you have that sort of thing. But there never was one Taoist who had authority over all Taoists. There never was such a thing. So the Taoists never came up with a similar establishment under Buddhism. For example, managing estates and dealing with funerals. Instead, they had a lot of other practices which blended in with some of our ancestral practice. Quite often, when you get to a village ceremony, you get a blend of different things that they do. There isn't a master script, but different participants would be doing what they was familiar to, and consequently you see elements of Taoism. But in its institutional terms, we probably borrowed a lot more from the Buddhists.
Professor, public lineage institutions are still quite active in Penang today. Can you comment on the state of them in mainland China today, and is there any comparison between the two?
Oh, they're extremely active behind that. You know, through the 50s, 60s, 70s, and into the Cultural Revolution, China did away with a lot of temples which they did. By the time the Cultural Revolution destroyed a lot of the spirit habits that we've got in Ancestral Hall, destroyed quite a lot of the features of the Ancestral Hall. But by the 80s, they've been coming back. And where we used to have ancestral halls, you know, places like Guangdong, Fujian, they're now everywhere. In fact, what you would find in a lot of places in the Peninsular Delta, you may not see the lineage as such, but because the property of the village is owned by the village as a collective, and the village is made up of people of the same surname. So what comes out as the village committee is in effect the lineage. You know, chairman is Mr. Chen, secretary is also Mr. Chen, and 5 of the committee members also Mr. Chen. They may not describe it to you that they are lineage, but in effect that's what they are. That is because the locality is organized on a legal basis. You've got all of those.
So would you say a lot of what was lost in the Cultural Revolution has been restored and regained?
Yes, a lot that was lost in the Cultural Revolution and restored, but you know, with all restoration, you don't actually get back the original. And you wouldn't expect it, because nowadays in China, you have company law too. And when you have a company law, and when you have custom regulations on financial dealings, you wouldn't be resorting to the lineage institution and the management of property in the way we had to in the 18th century. You see, so obviously it has changed. It's no longer the same thing, but yes, it has been restored.
How in these restored communities that take the form of lineage organizations, how do they accommodate women? Because I imagine women are now part of the village communities.
Quite frankly, I don't know the answer. I never, you know, one criticism I have of things I've written is that I pay enough attention to what happened to women. And I accept that criticism. The nearest I can think of is not China, but Vietnam. I was in Hanoi, in a village, set up very much like a lineage. I couldn't understand the language, it was all translated for me. And in the ceremony that I was told in the old days would have been conducted only by men, they repeated the same ceremony so that the second time round it was done by women. Now, I haven't seen anything like that in China. I mean, I don't know, for example, if you would look at representation on village committees in South China these days, that you would see really as many women as men. I mean, I would suppose you have a sprinkling of them, but probably nowhere near the proportion that their numbers would justify. But that's only my suspicion. Yes.
Has raised a couple of minutes ago, and your response to that. I really want to add one little point, namely the rich Confucianist ethical tradition, which has much impacted on the Chinese populace generally. And when it came to the Southern Song period, it was Chu Si's Neo-Confucianism, which again much strengthened the impact of it. So that is my understanding of what Sama has asked. But coming back...
that's what the confusing to believe.
Right. So it's a basic element which sustained...
I doubt it.
Without.
I doubt it very much. You see, the Neo-Confucians like to claim an ancient admitting it. When what you think of as the confusing side of the argument was very much limited to the aristocrats. So, according to the ancient practice, none of those rituals had anything to do with competence. They didn't count at all. While the neo-Confucians were sort, they were preaching to the competence. They were trying to convert that particular religion.
So it's a kind of a reformist movement
Yes,
within Confucianism.
Yes.
But the question that I want to ask is, from what you have presented, as regards the triad societies in general, what is your understanding of the symbolic triangle that appears in almost every so-called membership certificate of the triad?
Well, the descriptions I've seen are not triangular, but hexagonal. They often
Hexagonal.
They
No, I mean the
angles.
in between of them, there's a word "o" written there.
Wait, I think
That's what you
Actually,
showed
to
me.
represent the, when you mention the triangular, it represents the Kensia.
I think the point is they wanted to introduce an esoteric element, therefore they muddled up the order of the characters of the poem. And therefore you've got to follow a strict order in order to read that poem, to put it together.
Is that kind of what we call a metaphysical explanation of what I perceive?
I don't think so. I can read a lot of popular religion into their initiation rites. So we've got a number of accounts of what happened in the initiation. And you can read a lot of meanings into it. But if you think about it, do you really think an ordinary member knew all those answers? Probably not. They were performed. So this is a tradition that was passed down to form. You see, most participants didn't really know what they were carrying about.
If you were to go back to Just Hutt's explanation, it's a kind of spiritual transformation that they had to undergo.
Yes, if you go through this ceremony, because you wound up having to say a surname, so you can read into the ceremony, the whole process of rebirth.
Yeah.
Being a member of the society, you're killed and reborn. And so when you're reborn, you take on that new persona, that new surname. It is possible to read all that into the story. But whether that comes into the view of the participants is a different thing. I think it's much more theatrical than we would like it to be. We think of participants as members, but I think it's much more theatrical performance. It is.
Looking at this picture,
Yes.
earlier on you show a picture, the design of the ancestral hall in China always had 3 halls, right?
3 compartments.
3 compartments. Basically, there are 3 halls. In Penang, it's like 3 buildings.
No.
Okay, the one I understand in Penang,
Yes.
the center compartment is always the deity. They always have the main deity, just like the one at Pukongsi or Chagongsi. The one on the right, they always put the tablets.
I see. So you're talking about 3 halls across.
Yes. And the one on the left hand side is the Topekong, the earthy
Yes.
god.
Yes.
What about those in China?
Oh, they vary. They vary. I mean, sometimes you will even find what original with the center deity gets moved aside, with time. You know that they have moved these positions around. It's highly political. So the important position, of course, is the one in the middle. But who sits on left or right? That varies a great deal. It could be donors. It could be another deity. The Chinese are very open-minded religion. I often think we're much more open-minded about gods than Westerners. But as far as the Chinese are concerned, anything that works for you, you can burn incense. I mean, there's no such thing as a right God or wrong God. Anyone can bring a small statue into a temple and put it on the altar. So these things will vary. The more followers, the more more people will put there, the more profit.
Professor, if I may, we're talking about lineage, filial piety, and feng shui. One of my friends went back to the Ancestral village in China, and of course something went missing with the lineage during the Cultural Revolution, and the family was trying to link back where it went off, and there's about 4 generations who they wanted to include in that ancestral home back in the place called Shangfu. So they came back here to Penang, and everybody had discussion. And the ancestral home, the matriarch there, was asking for like 100,000 yen. And there was this uneasy feeling that should they comply, or if they don't comply, bad luck might befall on them here in Penang. So what is your take on this, Professor, please? Should in China?
You know, if somebody came to me and said, unless I paid the 100,000
Yuan, yeah.
they wouldn't put my ancestors on their altar.
No, I mean, they think about the 4 generations that were missing.
Whatever number of generations, they said that to me. I would say, well, I can jolly well do the normal stuff with myself. Isn't that right?
I got some missing link somewhere.
If the whole point is that ancestors go on altar, so that somebody takes care of their soul, you don't put my ancestors on your altar, I'll build an altar and I'll take care of them myself.
In Penang or in Chongqing.
Anyway, I mean, isn't that right? I mean, who says it must be those people who take care of my ancestors? You know, something comes to me tomorrow and says, give me $100,000. Otherwise, I will worship your ancestors. I'll say, thank you very much. I'm not giving you $100,000 because I can worship my own ancestors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
More like blackmail.
I mean, we have the Kongsi here in Penang as well. You know, I mean,
I don't know. You know, that's my reaction.
yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Just wanted to ask one question because it's a little bit controversial in Penang, but it's interesting that your lineage families and clan societies and so on, they're really lineage villages. The ancestral houses in the middle of the village is all nice and open. What happens when those people travel